Good evening. Good evening. It is Monday, April 17th. We are at 6 o'clock and we have a quorum plus one. We are missing Mayor Pro Tem Rogers, but having a quorum, I'm calling the City Council to order. Chair Spencer.
Yes, and being Monday, April 17th at 6:02, we have a full quorum here, plus two actually for the BEDC, and I'm calling the meeting to order as well.
Okay, council and board, some of you have used these mics and some of you have not. Here is the lesson. You have to get obnoxiously close or they don't get picked up, and then people call Colin and say, we can't hear, they won't talk into the mic. All the mics are off. You need to turn your mic on, but if you're not talking, please turn it off or we'll have feedback problems. So, and keep your phone away from the mic. Yes. So with that, we are so glad to have this group of people together. We're going to be having a work session, and I think we're going to have some great things to talk about today. City Manager and Executive Director, I think you wanted to go in this order. Is that correct?
I would like you to skip to citizen comments.
All right, let's go to citizen
that.
comments. Do we have anyone signed up for citizen comments? All right, we are done with citizen comments. So we will go back to work session item 2A, discussion and possible action on the existing BEDC policy in resolution R 2022-26 approved by the City of Bastrop on February 8th, 2022 related to metrics and industry gap analysis. Ms. Carrillo?
So thank you, Mayor. All right. So based on the work session or the policy that was approved last year by the council and then ultimately signed by the BDC that's in your packet, it's the resolution that's listed. There's a few things that moving forward, I believe both parties should be discussing, and we should be looking at movement toward getting some resolution to create a policy that does what everybody wants it to do, and that is create a supportive economic environment that continues to feed itself and acts like an engine. Right now, our engine is sputtering a little bit because we're missing some important metrics on what we're trying to attract, who we're trying to attract, and why we're trying to attract. So I will refer to the policy, Colin. I don't have the policy up. So item number 3 in the policy talks about BDC performance. There are recommended sectors, and one of those sectors is the entertainment industry. It warrants a discussion by the board if we're going to continue to pursue the entertainment industry.
People are searching for the packet, and all we got was the agenda, correct?
Oh, you should have gotten the packet.
And that's fine, but there was no point in us looking for it if it doesn't exist. And you can send it to us later. That's completely fine. I could see people frantically looking for it.
Sorry, I thought you received the entire packet. Let's turn this off.
You'll notice that all the butterbeans are gone. Oh yeah, okay. I ate 3. I ate these 4.
right, let's go to. Angela, do you know where you stored the entire packet? We should have dropped it in Teams. The completed packet. Okay. Oh, okay. I got it. Got it. Thank you. All right, here we go. So apologies for that. Thank you, Trey, for saving the day. So the staff report is the PowerPoint that is up on the screen for folks to talk about. And there are 6 items essentially that are in the packet that are in the policy that need to be visited. So I will bring the policy up. R 2022-26 is the policy that was approved in February 8th of February 2022. So the policy has several whereas statements, and one of them is alignment amongst the parties in terms of vision, personnel, measurements for success, implementation, process, systems, and accountability. That's probably the biggest whereas. Others are that the BDC contributes. So going to the therefores and all of the purposes to support successful economic development efforts in Bastrop, aligning BDC Board of Directors with the City Council's expectations. So creating policy direction. So we have a focus of the Bastrop of 2023 is expected to be thriving, connected, fully built out business park, et cetera, et cetera. So the first item on the PowerPoint is BDC performance. The city will rely on the BDC to exhibit leadership in business recruitment, maximization of the business and industrial park, business retention and expansion, promotion of film, media, and entertainment industries, and workforce development. So the first one is, are these the first 5 items that we really need to be talking about? Is the film industry something that we want to pursue? And if it is, how shall we pursue that? So these are big ticket, big level items. I don't expect us to solve all of them. I expect you to send me home with a bunch of homework today, but let's talk about the film, media, and entertainment industries.
Well, maybe I have it wrong, but I was under the impression that that very large project over there we've been working on for a year and a half kind of qualifies for film and media and stuff like that. Am I missing something?
Nope.
Okay.
Are we to further pursue film and media?
Okay, I got
I
you.
think that project was why it was on in the policy, because the intention was for the policy to be reviewed, especially for the priorities. But in some of the discussions, I feel like the real question you're asking is that more important than finishing out the industrial park? And do we think that the film industry is a good fit in the industrial park?
Okay, so really it's a matter of prioritization then of those. Okay.
I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint so we can toggle back and forth. I am just not working it today. I don't know. I'm lost. Angela, will you drop the PowerPoint in Teams again, please, in the files folder? Thank you. I was trying to be smart and jump back and forth to you, but
Tracy was saying he had it on a different source on the TV.
that would be too hard. I'm just trying to jump windows. I'm just trying to jump windows, not source. That's. I would drive Councilmember Kirkland crazy if I could figure that out. So are these first 5 items what we would like to consider? And then as we talk through workforce development, what type of workforce is that? I've been talking to the board and talking to the council about what industry is it exactly that we're trying to go after, and that should inform the type of workforce. I have statistics that I'm hopefully able to show you right quick. If I can figure out which TV this is. Maybe not. No, did you stop me? Okay, let's see. Yes. Ooh, it looks ugly. Sorry, technical difficulties. How can I connect my computer, Colin, to be able to share this? Which TV is this? How can I connect? Sure, that would probably be the quickest. Essentially, what the data is going to show is there's about 50% of our population who has a high school diploma and some college. That's almost half of our population. The other portion of the population, 17%, has a bachelor's degree. So as we start talking about workforce and we start talking about the development of that workforce and what we're trying to train for, we have to be cognizant of what our population. Yay. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Sylvia, is that a county data or is that city?
This is within 0 to 15 miles. This
Of
is
this-
Bastrop, city of Bastrop being the epicenter, and then 15 miles
15
out.
miles out? Okay. I'm trying to think, how big is the county? Does that mean it covers basically the whole Bastrop County?
Oh, no.
No,
No way. So
no.
about 50 miles out?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So I guess the reason I'm asking the question is, how, is that a good measure, to try to determine, maybe it is, I'm just asking a question, do you consider that to be a good data measurement, 15 miles out from the city?
So I did 15, 50, and 100 miles out. Our first priority is try to keep locals working, locals employed. So that's why I just did the initial 15, because folks are going to likely work closer to home, and 15 miles is a pretty decent measure of how far somebody travels to and from work that is within a reasonable time period to home, given all the traffic we have on 71. 15 minutes is not far from the epicenter of Bastrop. I can run some additional reports,
okay,
but
okay.
so the whatever industry we're attracting, we have to be cognizant of the educational attainment within the population. And what does that mean? Well, that means working closely with the schools that perhaps that some college or that additional college or the technical is going to be informed by whatever industry that is that we're attracting. I don't have a gap analysis yet for industry. The company that the BEDC uses isn't able to quite provide that just yet. So I'm having to piece together information just based on what's here, our last census information, actually some 2022 information that's relatively recent, what median income is, what kind of households live here, what kind of education we have, what our population demographic looks like. So those are all things that as a company is trying to locate here, one of the first things they look for is the civilian workforce. What does that workforce look like, and what can we attract while we're there?
Well, I know that we've got on the books a upcoming leadership meeting that is going to include BISD, EDC, city, county. Perhaps what we might want to take in consideration is discussing just that during that meeting so we can come up with what the answer could be, because we could start with what we have right now, but does that mean that's what we're going to have in the future? I don't think it is. I think we have to look at this 5, 10 years out, maybe even a little bit longer. I mean, we don't want to get too far out there. But I think that we don't have enough information today to answer the question. It's an ongoing discussion with all the relevant players in the field, And I think that's where we can come up with more of an answer to the question of what kind of businesses should we be looking at, and what kind of thresholds are we going to have that are going to give back? What are they going to do for the community at large?
I think that sets the metrics as well, because there's no point in attracting a business that needs a certain training if BISD's not equipped or prepared to do that type of training. And when we collectively with our partners pick that industry, then that's something that we can track. How many companies have we, and then your analysis will change, and we'll see an increase in that industry over a period of years, and we'll know that what we're doing is working or it's not, and we'll make some adjustments to that. But I agree, it's not something that BEDC or City Council or the City of Bastrop as a whole can do this by ourselves. There is no way.
There's no way.
I'd also be interested in knowing of our graduates that do go off to college or get a trade, how many aren't living here because we don't offer that. So I think that that's something that we could work with the school with as well, in gathering data to determine how maybe we do have a large portion of people that have graduated from here and gotten degrees, but they decided to live elsewhere because there's nothing for them for them to be able to use that degree.
And actually, I think if you look at what we just discussed, that pretty much kind of answers also the number 3, the leadership roles. I mean, every one of these things, 1 through 5, that's not how they're prioritized. That's just how they're shown on the policy statement, whether it's business recruitment, maximization of business industrial park, business retention expansion, promotion of the film, media, and entertainment, and workforce development. I think that what we just talked about covers all of these things. So I'm not sure if the discussion today on this is, do we reprioritize? I think we have to look at all of these things and then come up with this joint meeting that Sylvia Hugh had already suggested, that I believe is going to take place May the 22nd. So that's my comment.
What's the difference between promotion and business recruitment? Or it just seems like there's a little bit of an impedance mismatch with number 4. The other 4 of the 5 talk about, general vision type things, and then number 4 seems like it's a subset of one of a particular type of business recruitment focused on the sectors as recommended by the board and approved by City Council. It just seems like and oh, by the way, one of those sectors is this one, but it seems like it shouldn't be in the list of the higher order goals.
In other words, number 1 should answer the whole questions of everything.
Yeah.
If we struck completely through number 4, would it really change anything?
No, I don't know that it would.
I think that's a great point.
Assuming the other document had
Either
number
one.
4 on it.
Just take notes.
But
Either one. Okay. I cannot be jumping from keyboard to keyboard, sorry. So in the discussion, in the question that I posed for the council and the board is, what are those segments? And I'm interested to hear if anybody has any comments on what they believe industry segments we should be attracting.
Well, I don't want to answer that question, so I want to ask you a different question. When will the gap analysis be ready?
I need to find somebody who can do it.
So I think that's a priority, because I very much value the fact that you've got folks that work in the industry, but this is telling stories, and I'd really rather have the facts. So whoever BEDC is currently retained can't do the gap analysis, but surely someone in America can do a gap analysis for us.
They do. Who BDC has retained will do a retail gap analysis. They won't do an industry gap analysis. And we posed the question of what industry is looking for an airport within 15 miles,
Right.
a highway, major rail, et cetera, et cetera. We had a example report sent to us, but it wasn't substantive enough to tell me, okay, we have this many mining, we should have this many ancillary industry, or we have this many transportation hub, we should have this kind of ancillary industry that we should be going after or looking through. I don't have any of that data.
Well, my preference, and I'm only one person sitting here, is that we find somebody, that you find somebody to do that gap analysis for you, and you bring it back to the board and council to do the sanity check of, does this make sense, and are these the industries we want to go after, and do it based on fact would be my preference.
And some of those industries you may not want to, based on water usage, et cetera, et
Exactly.
cetera.
So we can do the sanity
Environmental
check, but I'd like to
pollutant, yeah.
start with
Okay.
an analysis.
The number 4 is also the strategic plan, and that also should be informed by the industry analysis. Where are we growing? Now with the Taylor plant in play, with the Boring Company and SpaceLink in play, what is that going to inform, and how do we begin to plan for that?
Well, I'd also like to recommend that we at least discuss the possibility of doing yet another strategic plan, because the last one we did 3, maybe 4 years ago.
Didn't we
The
do?
world
Gardner?
has changed significantly.
Yeah,
in
Yes,
Yeah.
and the world has changed significantly. So I would like to strongly recommend that we talk about that. In fact, we actually do it.
Yep. We did it, and then we did the update after the Tesla announcement, but that's like 27 centuries ago, right? So,
If that's something that we can put on for future discussion, I think that'd be a great idea.
Next one is metrics, and that's a big one. What does success look like? I talked to you about each business having their own success definition, but for the organization as a whole and the city as a whole, we should have some baseline success metrics. Employees, wages, diversity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We don't currently have any baseline.
Well, like every company out there, you do, whether you want to call them OKRs or KPIs or whatever the word that you want to use, we do have to have performance metrics. And that's something that I think that whether you want to start with that and going in the future when we have more of a full-time, somebody after, you get to go back to your regular work, we're going to have to develop those, because we have to have those metrics so we know what success is. You're absolutely right. We have to have that.
So I'm interested to hear from the board. We've talked a little bit about wages and employee attracting from the local environment mostly. Is that something the board and the council would like to pursue, ensuring that we have livable wages and that our employment pool is from the local economy?
I can answer. For me, it would be. To me, it's primary. It's significant that, whatever companies come in, they come to provide local jobs, if possible. Now, also, that's the reason why I'm big on the workforce development. I don't know, when you say gap analysis, I guess I would have to understand what all that would tell us. Because to me, before we can make a good strategic plan, I think we need to know basically, what industries we need to be going after and trying to attract. And the other thing is that, we talked about some of the cost of living and the income levels in the Bastrop area. And I think, the last assessment, I guess, was done based on retail, and it's obvious because, that's basically what we have is retail stores. I guess BISD is the largest employer, and then you go down from HEB and so on and so on. But to me, and you asked about industries, I'm hoping, as the mayor said, that we'll see once we get some more data, but I think manufacturing to me sticks out. And I really believe Bastrop should be the hub for manufacturing, but it's going to take workforce development.
Mr. Washington, do you think that some of that manufacturing is going to be ancillary businesses off of the Boring Company and Starlink and, our geographic closeness
Absolutely.
to them? I feel like the gap analysis is going to say, why wouldn't you want to have it close
Absolutely.
by?
Yeah. So-
Yeah, and our whereas it needs to point toward our therefores, because One of our whereas is produce public benefits, which should be a key factor, as well as improve job opportunities, to Mr. Washington's point. And I think that creating the consistency in our whereas to point to the therefores is what we need to get to have some sort of consistent process, whether it be direct, indirect, or induced industry in here. That's what we really need to provide, that consistency in our thought process and how we approach these. And to the mayor's point, having that gap analysis is going to indicate which rabbit hole we're going to jump into.
Right.
Well, the things that I had written down was manufacturing, like you said, and I have medical down because we're lacking with medical, in my opinion, and that's going to be something that's just going to come as we get more people here, and local people get sick of driving to Austin and have to go to medical. I know there's already a lot of doctors that are sharing time or spending one day a week here now versus just by my own personal stuff going to the doctor, that I don't have to go to Austin now because they're coming here. So I think that your gap analysis is going to show distribution, medical, manufacturing, and then retail we're not lacking for, but that's just going to grow as our population grows.
Absolutely.
So all those things, which I'm sure we're looking at already, and then the obvious thing is that the Boring Company and Starlink and everything else that's coming on 969 is all going to come this direction. So I think that the things that we've listed, the workforce that we've got is going to have to be improved, and I think that's going to be done with higher education. And just having one higher education facility here is I think we ought to be going after that as well. And I know we have been and are, but we have to continue our search for that and get somebody here to partner with us for it.
Yeah, I'll just say that it's almost like a chicken and egg scenario. We have to have the people that when we have to have the training that can lead to the jobs of the industry that we want to attract. And we're also going to have the wages that can pay a living wage around there. So it is a long-term process. There's not just one current answer right now that you can just open up something and go, boom, that's what we're going to have. It's going to take some time to do it, but we have to address all of these issues so that we can come up with something that's going to make it work here for this community.
And then the film and entertainment too is something that Bastrop's always had, and that's something special just for our area. And I think we'd be foolish not to keep that in our sights, but it doesn't have to be. I'm with Councilmember Kirkland on, we have 5 things listed. Number 4 was entertainment and movie. Do we really need to have that separated out? It should just be part of the top of the list with everything else. I don't know that it has to be segregated like that.
Well, and even like we've got some studios in the area, so it could even be covered in 1 and 3 business retention as well, right? Once they're here, keep them here. And
because I think we get deceived by having that listed like that, because now it just looks like we're just trying to go after those things, and that's not really the intent, I think, of listing that. I think it was just an accumulation of all those things, but that the intent wasn't to focus directly on that, because I've heard that come up several times in just conversations that, well, you told us to go after movie studio, and that's not really not to go after that specifically, but just as a group that was already here as well, because they make a lot of movies in the area, so we have that upside for us right now.
Well, I would concur on the medical. I had a mishap this weekend, went to the ER at Ascension and was told there are no beds, we can't see you. And they said, you look okay, you're ambulatory. Try Ally Medical next door. So, and then I get the notices on my phone about ETA for ambulance service. I won't even, my father has a heart condition, I won't even have him come visit because I'm afraid if something were to happen, can't get him out, can't get him somewhere fast enough. So, would love to see us develop in that area, but not sure that's something we can incentivize.
Well, I think, some of that also is what corporations look at when they talk about relocating to a place. And entertainment, things to do, recreation, I think is a big part of it, because you work and then you want some relaxation, enjoyment, entertainment. So I think that's a big thing that we need to really look at.
So we're going to touch on that one. And so item number 6 is we're supposed to be coordinating better as both entities. And really, there's 4 entities at the table, plus.
Before we leave metrics, I want to be clear because I think council has discussed it and I think the BDC board has discussed it as well. Building out the industrial park is absolutely one of the metrics, and finishing that infrastructure, having shovel-ready sites, putting the very best fit for the community into those sites, that needs to be a part of the metric. That land was purchased a year after, the BDC was created in 95, the land was purchased in 96. So that, I know we didn't talk about having priorities, but I feel like we've talked about that as a priority for a long time. And I also want to take advantage of, strike when the iron's hot. While there's interest, we need to get that park built out. So for me, the metrics need to be fairly specific for the industrial park. And
Priority number one.
And I'm open to other comments on that, but that's what I think.
And we are going to talk about a plan for the industrial park in a later segment of the meeting. So
Okay, I agree with the mayor that the industrial park, the closer we can get it to shovel-ready and infrastructure in, the easier it's going to be for companies to come here. And then you can't take them, we had a conversation earlier, you can't take somebody out there and tell them that it's going to be there at a certain date. It needs to be there ready for them to be building. So the quicker we can get everything in and the roads built, the easier it's going to be to get tenants to fill in there, and just waiting and hoping somebody's going to come and start putting that stuff in and going to happen. So the quicker we can do that, the better.
Well, and to be fair, the BEDC is working on that. We already have several projects. We've already got a lot of engineering work done, roads, lift stations, water, wastewater. So it's in the works right now, but I agree, that's something we have to prioritize, and the iron is hot right now. So we need to maybe push that up a little bit stronger then.
Well, again, I apologize, you guys didn't get a packet, but number 6 is coordination. There is a new matrix of responsibility that I've put together, really to what I call stopping head-on collisions. EDC staff does a good job in intaking, vetting, and then we get to a point where we are ready for capital work or other work or permitting work that has to go through the city, and what does that handoff look like, and is there a project manager assigned, is there an ombudsman assigned that's helping this project get all the way through the process. In our shared services agreement, we had talked about an ombudsman program where if it is an EDC project, it does get handheld throughout the process. So launching that and hoping that our partners who come into the park and other places that are incented by the EDC don't feel discouraged as they're going through the process because they can't meet a ribbon cutting date, for example. Number 7 is accountability, and that one really should be labeled coordination, because it really is talking about all of the entities. So, for example, we are going to be talking about some projects that affect not just the city, EDC, and the county, but also affect the school district. And we often leave the school district partners out of it, but the city has ordinances written where we could partner and potentially capitalize with the school. There are county participation dollars. There's a lot more entities than just the ones here at this table that have an impact anytime we're putting a project together. So making sure that we are seeing a complete picture. I was shocked, quite frankly, to learn now that I'm having regular meetings with the superintendent, the amount of school funding that goes away back to the state when we bring in a big project that we think, oh, great, the school district's going to benefit greatly, and they have to turn around and give that money back to the state because of the school funding formula. So anytime we're asking our partners to put more than their quote-unquote fair share on the line, we have to be cognizant of what that overall impact is, because what it will translate into is bond projects later on that need more city participation, et cetera, and we end up double dipping the taxpayer in multiple areas. Seven, 8, and 9 are basically the same thing. We need to refine the application, as I've stated before. The application is good. We've been using it for a couple of years, but the ask, quote unquote, the ask from the applicant is usually in the form of a cover letter. As we go through the process, it would be great that everything is listed on the application so we can compare really strong apples to apples and not try to figure out what the fruit salad is. Multiple conversations. Gene will go through multiple iterations of a project before we actually sit down and talk through the project. And even then, I still have questions. And even then, it's, I don't know, let me go back and ask, because things just aren't clear. And we've got to get a little bit better. We're not small anymore. We're competing with the big guys. And so we need some pretty substantial information and financial information from them too. I know they don't like to share things early on, but how best to determine the viability of a company if you haven't seen their P&L statements or aren't able to take a glance at the books? I'm not saying I want trade secrets or top secrets, but I do at least want to be able to understand that the company has filed its last 3 income tax reports and they are making a profit. They're not in a loss position. So.
Right, and that's just improving the vetting process when you have a prospective, company want to come in here. You have to vet them to understand what they do. So do you believe that's a function of better questions to ask or having more staff? I hate to say that, but I'm going to say it anyway. Or is it the process that we're using?
It's better questions and a better process. I think they have accountants and bookkeepers and things on staff. It's the package that we're asking for. Right now, we ask if we think we need it, if their application wasn't clear. I gave the example of a company who lists a certain number of employees, but the number didn't really match the number on the next page, and we go kind of back and forth. And then the answer that I got, the response that we got after all of that was, no, we're still thinking we're going to be about minimum wage. Well, that's not really, or a little bit above the prevailing minimum wage is, I think, what the statement was. Is that really somebody we want to incentivize to come to Bastrop? So.
I think should be information that we're absolutely gathering as we're going through the process and interviewing or visiting with all these companies is they need to be showing us their financial information, because if they can't bring a certain amount of employees or to us, then if we're going to selectively go out and pursue people, they need to be able to tell us what they can do financially and what they can do as far as people here bringing public.
Well, let me kind of clarify, if you don't mind. It's not that the BEDC goes out to go get people to come in. I don't want people thinking that's what the staff or the executive director does. Now we're getting to the point where they're coming to us. So I know there's a lot of people that think that the staff and the executive director spends all their time going out trying to look for the excellent company, and that's just not it. They come to us for the most part. Okay, I just want to.
Yeah, and I get that 100%. That there's companies coming here, and we're not going searching for them because they're out of land, realistically, and so Bastrop and the southeast side of Austin and in Central Texas, that's the only land that's available is here now, and so we're in a good position to be able to selectively pursue good companies, and we should be asking for, and I know we are already, but we should be making that a focus point to make sure that they're going to bring a certain amount of jobs to the area and a certain amount of income, so that we don't just stay in the blue collar, that we can raise up a little bit from that, and then raise our education levels.
Yeah, we're having
Throughout
conversations
the
right
county.
now,
Yeah.
just to that point. What are the thresholds? What's the criteria that we're coming up with that we want the right companies to come in here? So those are the exact questions that have been,
Yeah.
that we've having discussions on just very recently.
I just hope that in your role as executive, in the interim executive director, that we establish those things. Like if you're not going to share your last three, some public information, staff shouldn't be spending their time hunting down the information. And if you aren't prepared to share that information, that is a huge red flag to me. And so we shouldn't have to hunt them down. Particularly, they're not shy about knowing how much money they want. So they're real clear on the size of the incentive they're looking for. So they need to bring a minimal amount of information that allows the staff to be able to vet through and say, you know, best of luck, but we're happy to show you property, but there's not going to be an incentive, or you may want to look somewhere else. But it's a matter of making sure that staff's not wasting time, where, to your point, we're maybe not asking, our process isn't allowing the right questions to be asked at the right time to keep us from wasting time.
So what I would like to make sure everybody understands and that we're set up for from this point into the future is at some point the park's going to be built out. And EDC will still exist, and there will be other properties that we're hoping to incent through industry, right? What industry is trying, and working with property owners, et cetera, et cetera. That's crossing into the private sector world, but we still have a role. We absolutely will still have a role at that time. So making sure that whatever we're asking for is in line and does bring a realistic ROI. Not just an ROI based on the application that they filled out. I mean, we're really super digging deep to make sure this is a viable company that is going to, you know, be a part of the economic engine.
So I have some input. I've heard Sheriff Spencer say multiple times, we're not going out and ask. I think the reality is that people in the community think that we are, or we should be going out and asking. And I think that we're fortunate enough that businesses they are looking at Bastrop. But I think when we get the data and all of our analysis and kind of outline what our focal points, I think we absolutely should be looking for the right businesses to come in, because what might be trying to move here may not be moving here for the reasons we need them to be moving here, and offering the types of jobs that especially our younger generations with degrees are going to be looking for. So I kind of keep hearing you say that, but in my opinion, and I think many in the community are like, why isn't Samsung coming here? Why aren't these other technology companies coming here, or distribution centers coming here? And I think that that's where we need to use our data and put our marketing plan together so that we can go out and look for these businesses that might be looking for rural towns to build in, but make sure we have all of our ducks in a row, shovel ready for them to move to.
So yes and no. I think what Chair Spencer is referring to is we're not, hopefully not, I haven't looked at the travel logs, Angela and Jean could fill me in. Hopefully not, we're not going to ICSC, which is the retail in Las Vegas. We're not going to some of the trade shows in New York just to go, because the reality of it is, if we situate ourselves correctly, and by correctly, I mean we know what the business park is going to look like, we know what industry we're trying to attract. There are a handful of companies called site selectors who work for 50, 60 firms at a time, whose sole job is to go look for cities like ours who have this specific criteria. Our job is to help those 5 identify Bastrop, not going out. I don't ever really want to see us at Vegas. I don't want to see us at New York. I don't want to see us in San Diego. That's not our role. Our role is when they come in and we've partnered with these 5, and they know we're on the map, and they come to us, and we've got certain things going with the governor's office and the EDC office, then we put our best foot forward. But it leaves a bad taste in my mouth for us to be in Las Vegas, for example, trying to get a target to come here, when I don't have a shovel-ready site for a Target.
No, I was speaking more what you're referring to the site.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I was, so we do have, and we're partnering with them already?
We are not partnered with
Okay.
any site selector that has an agreement
That's
with
what I'm
EDC.
looking for, is something of that nature, not, who doesn't want to go to Vegas, but,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but someone focused on bringing in the business based on what Bastrop has to offer, not EDC just showing up for a meeting once a month
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Great.
No, we do not have agreements with any site selector per se. And there are some that specialize in retail. There are some that specialize in industry who are looking for certain characteristics. And once we can package ourselves and market that, yeah, that's a whole different than I think what Chair Spencer is wanting folks to know. We're not going to Vegas to try to try to bring people here. Okay. So just to reiterate what we said, I heard you say we need the industry gap to inform. We need to get working on a strategic plan. Once we get that, we need to understand what our KPIs are, key performance indicators are, to create a metrics. And we believe we have some ideas about manufacturing, medical, and recreation sort of industries, yeah. Quality of life, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, and we need to be careful with the manufacturing because those are high utility usage businesses. And so we need to make sure that we're doing a great job because we have a brand new wastewater treatment plant and brand new water coming. So, but if we can see what we can bring in, we'll know what we can expand to in a short amount of time. And I know that the wastewater treatment plant and the water has good expansion capabilities, and the quicker we can get that expanded and some industries paying for it, it's just going to help the quality of life for everybody here because we'll have good drinking water and good sewer. If there's such a thing.
And also, I think we need to remain nimble and somewhat flexible to meet the changing dynamics. Because once again, we can point out to the musk industries that have come onto our shores and what all we could not have anticipated those 4 or 5 years ago. And we need to be nimble to be able to meet the changing demands that come about. That's why I think removing number 4 would seem to relegate it to just a single point. We've put it in the more expansive policy statement. So, good point.
Sylvia, do you have any idea how long it would take to get the industry gap analysis?
I do not. I would say by your next meeting. That's my hope. I mean, there are companies who can run a retail one pretty quickly, so I hope to find a company who can run an industry one
Okay.
pretty quickly. To be?
All right, we are going to be moving on to item 2B, which is on the top of page 2. Discuss some possible action on a responsibility matrix identifying roles of all parties in the city and BEDC for clarity and accountability. Ms. Creo.
So again, my apologies. Let's see if I can view this in a normal view. So part of, and I mean this with no offense to anybody in the room, past, present, or future. Part of what I believe is a lot of the rub along the way with, between staff, between the board, between the council is understanding where our lanes are and understanding what a good handoff looks like. This is a very, very, very long marathon. It's not a sprint. And the marathon has certain points, right, where you stop, you rest, you refuel, and you run the course. Economic development, similarly, is not something that is going to happen tomorrow. It takes a long time for us to even get to the industry point. We vet, we go through all of the process, we get to a letter of intent, we get through the point where the board is voting on an incentive package, et cetera, and then what? And then the handoff. Where is that handoff? And oftentimes, before this, where we weren't meeting regularly, the city is often in a position, as with the industrial park, for example, that we said, nope, 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 you need to be an employment center, or you need to be X, or you need to be Y. And how does that fundamentally fit into the EDC role of what they were trying to accomplish in the industrial park? So super, super, super important for us to understand where the handoffs are. The shared services agreement points to all of this already. None of this is new. This is just a good reference point that says the EDC staff will do an excellent job of attracting, of vetting, of going through all of that process. And once that has reached a point where we need to be talking about any infrastructure or any improvements to the site, et cetera, there is a point where there has to be a handoff. There is a point where there will be involvement by EDC staff, but we will be coordinating with the Development Review Committee, for example, in an early assistance meeting. What's needed on the site? Does it have appropriate infrastructure? Does it have all of those things before we get to a point of an incentive agreement? Before that. We do a lot of that now, but we still trip up on ourselves, especially because site conditions change. We have a plan, we have an idea, we think we know what we're going to do, and I'll use the MoCA project as the perfect example. We think we know what we're going to do. They give us a date that they want to cut ribbon. How do we make that date working backwards? That really is the specialty of city staff, and what EDC staff should be doing is making sure that we're meeting certain milestones. Every project should have a project manifest, for example. What is supposed to be received, what is the expected outcome, and by what date, and what are those milestones? It just keeps us honest, and it keeps the applicant understanding what's expected of them. There's some projects who will always point mom to dad. There's some projects who will EDC being mom and the city being dad. You know, go ask your dad. I don't really know, or your dad said no, or go ask your mom. And we're going back and forth without us actually understanding whose role is what. We will trip up on each other and pointing out when you veered from your lane because you caused a head-on collision. I keep using the example, and I'll use it to my dying day, and my friends in Corpus Christi may be a little bit upset with me. But when I ran the Development Services Department in Corpus Christi, I would get a package from the EDC. I would get a visit from my favorite person at the EDC, and she'd say, oh, I got this great project. You're going to love it. Da, 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 da. We kept them from going out in the county because, you know, no permits required in the county. Kept them from going out in the county. We're going to do this. And I'd say, what site? And they'd give me a site, and I'd go, oh my God, you couldn't have picked a worse site that doesn't have infrastructure. It's going to have to go through rezoning, or there's no way it can meet X, Y, Z. And then I was left being the bad guy. Very similar to what happens here is we get a project we think is great. We think we're going to make it work. And then we run through the development traps and we go, yeah, not really going to work there. So moving a lot of that discussion up front before the board even sees it, before the council even sees it, on what is really economically feasible. And if there's something that the city needs in terms of participation by oversizing a line, for example, then that's on our nickel, or that's on our hook, or we've got some agreement with EDC where there is some city participation for line costs, and it's not solely on an economic development incentive package. So that's what this is. It's already in the shared services agreement. It's just given it life in a matrix on who's supposed to be doing what.
So looking at that matrix, I know that L is lead and CL is co-lead.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at line 9, you have 2 co-leads. And when you have 2 people equally in charge, you have no one in charge. And the other lines all have a lead, and then somebody else is the co.
So I left meet with the applicant with a joint EDC city because, again, this is, and I'll give you an example of one project in particular who has certain electrical needs. EDC staff looked at a map that says, oh, okay, that's X provider. And then we go, oh, no, there's a handshake agreement that nobody knows of. Nobody in the city knows of. And the only one who knew it was a city staff member who's been here forever and a day and said, oh, no, we have a handshake agreement. We serve in that area. And so there's a lot of that in a city like ours. And so that's why I left both of us making sure that we meet. Initially, this is EDC should be the lead. I just hated to leave myself.
No, that's
out of
fine.
it.
And I guess my only deal, and you know, I'm maybe diving into the weeds. I hope we're not having that conversation for the first time when we're meeting with the applicant. So that conversation of, oh, wait, that's not really our area, and running the preliminary ROI, is that where some of that stuff comes up? It just feels like there should be a coordination step of that handoff or the equal co-leads. I'd rather that be a feasibility meeting or a something before meet with the applicant, because the way and I know you're not trying to write down what everybody does all day and when they go to the bathroom, and I'm not looking for that, but when there's two co-leads and you're doing it for the first time, it just feels like you're setting up with the applicant, and that's the last place that you want to not be completely tied out.
Oh, no, and that's the case right now with EDC and even with city staff as we go through DRC. Because we're in the process right now of making sure everything is mapped correctly. Oftentimes we met with an applicant the other day who said, oh no, I have wastewater. And we went, no, it doesn't show on the map. Let's bring up the map. Showed the picture. Oh yeah, there's a manhole right there. So we're growing, we're catching up with technology, but there are just some things that unfortunately, unless there is a seasoned city employee at the table, there's no way for any of us, we would have known that there's a handshake agreement in that area. And that's painful. That's painful. That's why GIS is so important, and we've just hired a person, and we're going to get there. But that gather data stage, that's why I have EDC there. They are making phone calls. They are researching the maps, but they haven't had access to our maps until recently. They haven't had access to our data. So it's a big curve this way. And sometimes, so there should probably be an intermediate step between gather data and meet with the applicant to make sure that we all have the same information before we meet up. So.
And I didn't mean for you to change it. You
No.
put a lot of thought into it, so I'm fine with the two co-leads, because it also feels like that's when there's the handoff of now we're not fishing, now they're hooked, and now we're moving to the next stage. It caught my eye, and I appreciate your explanation. Yep.
So we go through outreach and introduction. We go through project management of the project. This lead and co-lead, this is really that ombudsman. This is, there will be at some point a person who is hand-holding throughout the process. Who that staff member is going to be, not really sure. If we're shifting our focus to workforce development and small business retention, I don't have a staff member per se that is solely a project manager. And the project manager that we do have on staff is really from the engineering perspective, isn't necessarily a project manager that's helping with all of the fine details that a project would entail. And then we get through to permitting, which is in and of itself a monster. And then support services, what does that look like as we're going through the process? And then design and development. And really, again, all of this is iterated in the shared services agreement. This was just my attempt to make sure everybody understands what that means, everybody's roles are clear, and we stay in our lanes.
Council board, any comments?
We use something very similar at work. It's called RACI, but this basically is the same thing as a RACI matrix. So you're just designating who has the responsibility, what their actions are, and staying in their lane. So I think it's a great idea to have this thing and to use this going forward with every single project, so everybody knows what their role is, what their responsibility, what their accountability is. So I applaud you for putting this together. I think it's great.
Just a visual to what the great ideas y'all already had in the shared services.
Mr. Washington, were you going to make a comment?
This is what you're proposing? You've already decided?
This is what I'm proposing. I'm going to add number 6, which is add a step to verify the data before we meet with the applicant. So in that example, for example, where EDC staff didn't know that there's a handshake agreement, didn't know that. So we're ready to meet with the applicant, and we get a request that to connect to Blue Bonnet is, I don't know, $300,000, let's just say. And that's going to be part of their EDC requests his connection to that particular utility, only to find out that there's a handshake agreement and there's something right across the street that's BP&L, and it's only, it would really be $0 because we can put it on their bill or something like that is, I need to add that step there.
Okay, but what I'm asking is, this is what you're proposing on?
Yes, sir.
On each project?
Yes, sir.
And that's something that's already been discussed with the EDC staff?
No, sir. It's in your shared services agreement already in terms of who's providing what and the services the city's providing. But no, this has not been, neither city staff nor EDC staff have
Okay.
seen it.
So we supposed to agree with this?
No,
or
you don't
vote
have to
on it?
agree. I'm,
I mean, disagree, agree, you know, vote on it? Is that what you're asking for us to do? Or
It's,
just-
it's posted for possible action. I mean,
Yeah, so discussion and then some action?
and possible action.
Possible action, okay.
But I think there's some steps there, so I wouldn't ask you to vote on this tonight, especially learning that you didn't get a packet, so I'd ask you to read it.
I think it's a great idea to have the document just so that we can
Right.
define roles of what we're doing, and I think it's a really good, and the dashboard that you're making is going to help everybody, so they'll be able to see what areas have utilities available, which ones don't, and what it's going to take to get things there, because that's really a deal killer. If we're talking to a company that has a high electrical usage or a high water usage and we don't have infrastructure there, it's going to cost too much to get it there, then we need to know that way up front before we're making a commitment to potentially make a commitment to someone and then can't fulfill that. So this will help us define who's doing that and when, and making us talk to each other before we get with the applicant, and then maybe give them some bad information. So I think it's really good.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's what I've been saying is I think up front, everybody knows what their roles are, who you need to be dealing with, especially for the businesses coming in. I mean, so it won't be any surprises. So that's great.
On the topic of approval or not approval, this feels highly operational, and almost like your split personalities should be discussing it between the EDC and the city manager, come to agreement and then present it as a finished work, but not so much for us to approve it.
Well, it is a change. Some of it is a change in where EDC staff has been functioning, and also city staff where they've been functioning. City staff has a belief that they should jump in at a certain point, and EDC staff has a belief that they shouldn't jump in until a much later point. It's really just trying to bring a method to the madness so that no head-on collisions continue to occur. And it's clearly delineated, so.
But to Councilmember Kirkland's point, you did this based on on a document that council has already approved. So this is really an
Yes.
implementation process step, I think is your point, and
Yeah,
like knock yourself out, operate away,
yeah.
right?
I mean, looks good.
Yeah, I think this would have solved a lot of the problems that we've had over the years. You know, being on the EDC board as long as I have, I mean, I think Ron can vouch for this too. I mean, most of the biggest issues that we've had with the city could have easily been solved before they happened if we had that kind of communication and that kind of well delineated steps. And when who knows what has always been the issue. And yeah, to the extent that we can solve that, solve away.
Right.
Well, and I think sharing the map with EDC staff, sharing business analysts, sharing all the tools that we do use internally to make a decision about a project is critical. I mean, they were kind of operating with one hand tied behind their back, waiting for us to provide the information that oftentimes would be a project killer or would make the project, the ROI, not reasonable because of what's required. The flip side of that is, oh, the city has a capital project plan there? Oh, didn't know that. Wow.
Right. I mean, there's another person has a permit to do, something very similar to bring, that to the area that didn't go through the EDC. And so, oh, that's already halfway done, again.
Yep.
Well, I just want to make a comment here is that, yes, that is in our shared services agreement, but I also think it's good that we're showing the public that not only do we talk about it in verbiage, we show it that we're making progress, working together, and making sure we have roles and responsibilities and accountability. So I think thank you very much for putting that together, Sylvia.
The entire matrix screams communication, and duh. I mean, it's very clear that a lot of the problems that have existed have been a lack of communication. Why? I'm uncertain of it, but this certainly improves communication, lays it out quite nicely.
So I feel like we're in violent agreement. Can we move on?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so item 2C is discussion and possible action regarding a joint area development plan.
And Mr. Trey just stepped out of the room. I have some maps to share. Yes, decide on a bunch of stuff before he gets back. No, he sent me the agenda.
Just for clarification, Mayor, was this, and I guess we'll wait for Trey, but I'd like for you to maybe explain that a little bit more. Is this different than what we talked about earlier about having that leadership meeting and to
I'll
go
let
over
Ms.
that?
Carrillo answer that. Did you hear
Okay.
Chair Spencer's
I'm
question?
sorry?
Is 2.3 similar to the discussion on having the leadership meeting with all the, to discuss all the resources and the projects that we want to do with city, BISD, EDC, county, and the likes that we talked about earlier?
I'm sorry, what number are you on?
2.3, discussion and possible action.
2C, the one that you have
Sorry,
called up.
2C.
Oh, no.
Oh, it's different.
Not at all.
Thank you.
Not at all. Where do you have your map for the joint area? So the joint area development plan is the discussion with the movie studio that we chose not to incent the movie studio, but rather extend infrastructure. And the impact that infrastructure extension, it is a multifaceted plan. So as opposed to just talking about from the studio perspective, what that infrastructure would do for the industrial park, what that infrastructure will do for Lover's Lane, what that infrastructure will do for Pine Forest 6. And so we're looking at it from an area development plan per se.
The county and BISD.
Yes, the county, BISD, EDC, and city all together. What does that mean for us? So if you recall, and while Trey's getting that, I'll give you the background of this. If you recall, the movie studio was asking the tune of about $3 million. And we said, no, not going to do that. We would rather enter into an agreement with the city and do some infrastructure investment of water and wastewater in that particular area. The EDC is also planning the lower part of the industrial park. And so making sure that we tie that in so that we're not wasting triple dollars on engineering. So we've got studio engineers, EDC engineers, and city engineers. On top of that, MOCA engineers. On top of that, the people who would be working on Pine Forest 6. So looks like Trey just sent that. So I'll wait till he comes, but this is essentially the approved area map. What isn't here is the movie studio is over here to the left, and the lift station location for the EDC is currently here with a proposal to move here. And so making those slight adjustments for the theater to be able to gravity feed in that direction, making adjustments to the engineering in the park, it just opens up that entire area completely. So Trey, do you want to have a comment? Do you want me to go to the aerial first?
Sure. So what we talked about, sorry, I missed some of this. I was sending it in Teams. This is a great example of where the Pine Forest 6 development you can see on the far eastern edge will eventually develop, right? We're very close to some type of deal. We've been talking about an ILA with the county. It really made a lot of sense to make sure that all the infrastructure there and the infrastructure can support the infrastructure to the north and the infrastructure to the west. So what you'll see in this map is a potential.
Go start with the movie studio.
Sure.
because here's the agreement to the studio. Here's the agreement that, so if you recall, the movie studio was going to do an on-site lift station. They were going to do just a lot of engineering to get to a very short distance. And so by modifying where the lift station location is within the business park and modifying that over here to also EDC-owned property, this line can then feed, and then it also opens up all of Lover's Lane, which includes a county building. The school is proposing an expansion to their public safety and their bus barn in this area. It will open up additional area within the park, and again, with the connection into Pine Forest 6. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's perfect. Ultimately, making improvements to the system, making it more efficient. You'll be removing an existing lift station in the park at some point, and you'll basically be replacing it for the lift station that you see to the west of the tracks. And we were able to do that by working with the studio and make sure that everything could gravity feed to that one point, which makes a better system, which opens up a lot of development there. On the north end, you can see that One World development where they're talking about some industrial uses there, along with possible condos, apartments, things of that nature. Then each of the 5-acre tracks, north and south, kind of along that, it's 20, 25 acres there that leads up to the EDC property west of the tracks. All of that's primed and ready for development, including the county precinct 1 yard that's going to be built. So again, this is just an opportunity to, while you're working on the lower portion of the park, to coordinate. It's just good, it just makes a lot of sense. And it's really shouldn't impact the overall development of the park at all.
So one of the things we had talked about during, I believe it was the December meeting, was leaving these lots in rather large sizes because you don't know what industry you want to attract. I mean, ideally, you could parcel those out into a variety of buildable lots, 5-acre lots. But because we don't know what you're going to attract, I don't want to pull you through that particular knothole right now and leave it open and wide for development. This does still show the connection into Tahitian, and it does also show the connection into Pine Forest Sixth. And I know that's been a topic of conversation, so I would really like to hear from the board because I don't believe the board was fully aware that the school supports that intersection, those, and I don't believe the board was aware that the county supports those also from a safety perspective in Tahitian and a safety perspective from Pine Forest. What I heard from the prior director was that the board did not support residential circulation in the industrial park. So I really would like to get that out in the open to move forward either way, either amending the plan or working through that.
So right now, as you have it drawn, do we see 3 different entrances into and out of Tahitian Village?
No, it's this one into Tahitian
Right?
and this one into Pine Forest.
Got it. I thought there was another one up
No,
up
here.
and more north. Okay, so it's 2 of them. Gotcha.
Those lots aren't built out?
No.
Okay.
And
And
the lot,
BDC owns the lots that we would go through.
yes,
Knows that line, yeah,
and the county owns this lot.
farther east, but yeah,
Further east,
further east. Yeah, the road alignment's not exact. It's what was approved.
But that's the intention, is to
But
go
that is the
through.
intention, is the connectivity. That's right.
Has there been any, I'm not going to say a traffic study because it's not open yet, but is there any idea or a guesstimate of how much traffic from the residential area would traverse through the industrial park?
That's what they're currently working on. If you remember, just about 2 months ago, EDC funded a small portion of the study around the schools. We included this to see what the traffic impact would be. There's roughly 3,500 cars a day that drive up and down Lover's Lane, which I think will be eased greatly with the South Street connection or the Lover's Lane connection, they're calling it, which is what we're looking at now to make sure what makes the most sense. And you'll disperse that probably equally. I think it's more likely the folks that are leaving the residential area to go through the business park will do so to go to work than to go, they'll be going somewhere versus Lover's Lane or vice versa.
I know that part of the quality of life is not spending your entire life in a car. And without those connections, that puts you through a level F service at Lover's Lane and 71, and you get to go on a wild goose trip to try to get onto the freeway because there's all kinds of turns and stuff that are going to remain in place. So I think that as industry comes there, and to the point of if we're seeking industry that's not paying a wage that you can only afford to have a roommate in a one-bedroom apartment, you are offering that. For me, that's another incentive to offer a business that your top management could ride their bike to work, could walk to work, could be on the other, on the other side of the wall. And from Sylvia, you mentioned the county and the school. It's from moving buses and getting kids to school on
Yes.
time to emergency traffic to just day to day relieving the intersection of Lover's Lane, which is bad now and only going to get worse. Is that an accurate
Yes.
summary?
Yes.
In our conversations with the school, 62% on average, 60 to 62% are actually bus ridership. They're going to and from the schools, and they do plan on, at this Lover's Lane location, increasing the size of the bus barn and the bus traffic. So it's only going to get worse, I guess, is the point.
Well, one thing I don't see up there, and maybe it's not this meeting we're going to talk about it, but in the past, we have talked about the extension of Smith Street with a bridge
It's on the
type
aerial.
thing over, sorry,
South.
South Street. My
It's on the aerial.
apologies. South Street. Is that also up here? 'Cause
Yes.
I don't see it just yet. Okay.
Yeah, if you look at the aerial, it's there
Thank
to
you.
the north. What we're looking at also is straightening out Lover's Lane as part of that study. I don't know if you want to show that corner, right? I'm sorry, the one that goes east-west, the portion right here.
Oh. So that was the topic of discussion during the movie studio is South or Lovers, which one makes more sense? And the engineering the engineering comparative is being done right now.
Okay, so we just need to wait to see what that's going to look like, because it would, yeah, I mean, if it goes to South Street, I can see where maybe the buses would probably utilize that more than trying to cut through the majority of the industrial park. So,
Yes.
okay, yeah.
And that's the goal, to have them, because of the distance from South Street to 71, the traffic currently queues about 1,700 feet from the intersection of Lover's Lane and Highway 71. South Street's early enough that people would turn to the right, go up to the Jackson Street intersection, that functions at a real high level. We're currently, you can see the high at the very top, we're currently doing an intersection review and study of that intersection as well for improvement. So as traffic increases, it'll also make recommendations on how to move traffic through there.
The school needed some relief from plating authority for construction of the school. So in return, they're working with us to solve traffic issues in the ILA with the school. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any issues whatsoever. I mean, I think it's a good idea that we're adding that goes on with the transportation, study that's being done, that the city is going to, win, the county's going to win, the school's going to win. I mean, to me, looks like it's an overall good plan.
now in all transparency, I did have a current occupant in the business park this morning at my sit with Sil who expressed concern with any additional traffic in the business park. And I said, well, half a one, because it's so sparsely built out right now. Any additional build out is going to increase traffic. So, 6 one way, half dozen the other. Which one would you like? And he said, well, I've already put up a fence. I guess I'll put up another fence because vandalism had been at an all-time low because there are so few people in the park. You're only traveling through there to get to a particular destination. So that's just in all transparency.
Or they're there because they're either there for good or they're there intentionally for bad because there's a lot of places to hide, right?
I think it's a great example of communicating with all of the people invested in that, the school, the county, the city, and BEDC. So that's a great example of your other chart where everybody's going to come together and have some input into it and get all the information. What action do you need for the item? Because it said discussion, possible action.
What I wanted is I wanted to be clear that the EDC board understood the need and understood what the communication had been, because I didn't believe that they had fully been explained all of the pieces. The initial conversation, when you say residential through industrial, even I initially said, doesn't make sense. Those are incompatible uses. Doesn't make sense. But anybody who's driving through Central Texas, you're navigating the 18-wheelers on 35 anyway, all day. And this is at a much reduced speed. But when we have the conversation with all of the partners at the table and all of the partners are saying, please, we need this, I'm sure had the EDC had that explained to them, I think we'd be having a much different conversation.
Yes, and in the past, there was a different thought process, and that thought process has changed, and we're all happy about that. So, yeah, this is good.
So, yeah, one of the items is we're going to be looking at the scope of all of the engineers. The movie studio has, Alton, the owner, has told his engineer to give us anything and everything related to the project so that we could move this thing along. City engineering, we're working through that, and Doucette is working through it for EDC. There will be a need to adjust Doucette's scope, because he's working on a particular site plan that you guys visited in December that was just the technology loop, which was really just the spine to keep the project moving forward. And if you remember when I talked to you in December, I said, time out, there's more to it than that, but okay, we'll let technology go through. EDC funded a very large amount for that engineering. So modifying the scope, I do not believe will have a detrimental impact, any more money needing to be allocated out. But knowing or hopefully you'll take a vote that everybody's in agreement with with the plan as it was adopted. We'll move forward in that regard to make sure everything's moving in the right direction. All of the entities are coordinating, and anything that we need from any engineering party we'll be able to get.
So are you looking for just an approval of the joint area development plan as presented? Is that the best way to word that? Should someone be so inclined on city council to make that motion?
Motion to approve the plan as presented.
I have a motion from Councilmember Kirkland
Second.
and a second from Councilmember Plunkett. If you're on council and you're in favor, would you please say aye?
Aye.
If you're
Aye.
on council and you're against it, would you please say nay? Motion carries. Chair Spencer?
Yeah, someone like to make that motion?
I move to accept the plan as presented.
Second?
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed that are on the BEDC board, say nay if you don't like it. All right, motion carries.
Just so you know what changed. This is what you voted on in December, which was really the technology spine. And so you're just going back to what is originally approved, and we'll work through that, making sure all of the engineering is coordinated.
What I
Still-
heard from that motion and from your conversation is we're going to make sure that we don't misspend tax dollars and waste it, and make sure that it's all being used appropriately.
Correct.
Yes, and the fact that when we finally come up with the finalized drawings, we'll have the discussion on, is there any differences in the cost? Because Sylvia was right, there was a lot of money that's already been approved for it. So we will address that when it comes up.
All right, there are no staff and board reports. We've already addressed citizen comments. We're moving to item 5A, discuss some possible action regarding an interim executive director services agreement between the City of Bastrop and the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation. Is this formalizing what we said?
It is formalizing. The board has already approved it. Council has not approved it. Both Charlie and Alan have drafted and come to terms with the agreement.
So council's used to seeing a resolution with numbers. Is that such a thing that exists or not so much?
Yo no sé. Let's see.
Doesn't have to be. We can do it and fill in resolution numbers later, but if we've got them, I'd like to include them.
I do not see maybe. Let me see. No, I do not see a resolution.
Okay, well then.
Angela, no resolution, right? Okay.
Council, are you clear? This is for her to get an additional salary since she's doing 2 and sometimes 3 jobs at the moment.
Does this agreement give the money to the city or to the city manager? To the city. That's what I thought. So how do we close that loop?
Alan?
Welcome.
Mayor, Council Board, you have in front of you an interim executive services agreement that says for $42,500 a year in equal monthly installments that the city will be paid this money by the corporation in exchange for the city manager providing this service directly. There's no separate resolution required if you wish to take action on this.
Sorry, you said.
What is required?
So the question is that this money goes to the city.
Turn on your mic.
Sorry.
Yes.
The money goes to the city, but then let's say hypothetically that the city council wanted this money to go from the city to the city manager. How do we tie that loop together?
I think that would be a separate agenda item, Councilman Kirkland, in which you would modify your agreement with your city manager.
Okay.
So what I hear our city attorney telling us is that since the BEDC board has already approved spending those funds, that if someone was so inclined on council, they could make a motion to approve the interim executive director services agreement and direct the city attorney to draft a resolution for the next council meeting that would have that money amend the current contract with the city manager.
Certainly, that would be appropriate.
Motion to approve, item 5A,
With the caveats.
with
that-
the caveat that
There we
the
go.
city attorney will draft a resolution.
I have a motion from Councilmember Lee
Second.
and a second from Councilmember Kirkland. If you are on council and you agree, please say aye.
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 If you are on council and you disagree, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. All right, that gets us to executive session. So, and are we needing to do that? We can go to the back. Because I know there'll be some folks that'll make a bio break on the way. All right, it is 7:28, and both City Council and the BEDC Board will be going into executive session pursuant to Section 551.087, deliberation regarding economic development and negotiations to discuss the following: Project Third Arrow, Project Western Edge, Project Jam, and Project Walk of Fame. It is 7:28, and we are in executive session. Okay, it is 8:14, and we are back in regular session. We're on item number 7, take any necessary or appropriate action on matters posted for consideration in closed executive session. There will be no actions taken as a result of executive session, which brings us to item number 8 for City Council. Councilmember Kirkland?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn from Councilmember Kirkland.
Second.
And a second from Councilmember Crouch. It's 8:15, and City Council stands adjourned.
All right, for the BEDC, need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Okay, you need a second.
Oh,
Second.
I need a second, sorry.
Second?
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.